Bonjour tout le monde. Hello everybody, welcome back to the Circuit Paul Ricard at Le Castellet in the south of France. The GT4 European Series 2023 continues here after a gripping race yesterday where we saw our third different car, our third different manufacturer take a win in the first three races of the season. It looks like we could be in for another thrilling encounter today. 20.8 degrees air temperature, 26 track temperature. So it's going to be a little bit cooler than it was yesterday, and that could really give us a sensational battle. It's Jake Sanson and Ben Constanduris in the pits, and Gemma Scott is down on the starting grid.
Michael, you guys had a bit of a difficult first race yesterday. What happened?
Yeah, it was not the result we wished for. P12 in the end. We had an issue with the front splitter. I had the issue directly in the first turn, and then we had to drive with a broken front splitter the entire race, and that was kind of difficult.
Was that as a result of contact coming into turn one?
No, it was my fault. I hit a bumper, and yeah, in the end the front splitter got broken, and so we had to drive with it.
Well, all things being equal, today should be a little bit better, starting from pole.
It's the best situation we can have now. Gabi did a great job in the second qualifying, and now we wish for a good result in the second race.
Thank you very much. Have a great race.
Thank you.
Gemma Scott catching up there with Michael Schrey. His teammate Gabi Piana will be starting in pole position for this race for the second race two in a row, because obviously they were in pole position at Monza. They converted that into a race victory. So we could get our final broken run. We've had three different teams and three different manufacturers take the wins in the first three races of the season. But from the GT4 European Series races so far, whoever has started in pole position has come through to take the victory, Ben. It's looking good for the number 2 crew in there, Hoffa BMW. It's not guaranteed around this place.
Yeah, if Michael Schrey can get a better pace than he had yesterday, even in the race, but it also in qualifying, it's not a foregone conclusion that number 2 is just going to check out and disappear. Such was the pace also of the Aston Martins behind. There's 3 of them behind the BMW, and there is Yediz Gejek. They've got a penalty at the very back of the field, the number 11 car, actually from free practice, causing a collision in free practice, and they will start at the back of the field.
Down on the grid on the second position with Gemma.
Victor, on est chez nous ici, en France. C'était un super début pour le week-end hier avec une victoire. Aujourd'hui, le deuxième place sur la ligne de départ.
Ouais, on est très contents. Les Aston Martin sont vraiment très rapides ce week-end. On a fait des bonnes qualifications. Constantin par 2 aujourd'hui, donc c'est super. On va essayer de faire les mêmes relais qu'hier. 2 relais sans faute, un bon arrêt au stand, et puis j'espère le même résultat qu'hier.
On croise les doigts. Bon courage et bon course, merci. Victor there just saying that Aston Martin have done a fantastic job with the car. They've done a fantastic job as a team. They had a fantastic result yesterday with the win, and it was very much a pleasure to be there on the top step of the podium at a home race. And they're looking to do exactly the same again today.
Porsche Carrera Cup Junior Rookie of the Year in 2021, and ski instructor in Chamonix, Victor Weyrich, alongside Konstantin Lachnauer, who is part racing driver, part law student. So many stories attributed to all of these drivers, whether they are young chargers or some of our elder gentlemen. It was fascinating to see what they do with their spare time. This car, very familiar with the Beauvais logo on it from last year as well. Konstantin Lachnauer and Gus Bauer's very successful with it. Once again, at the head of the field, clear track ahead of them, but they are second on the grid.
Well, that's it. It's very, very tough to get yourself together to be a racing driver at this level. So you have to fund it somehow. Down on the second row of the starting grid, Jamie Day is going to be going alongside his teammate Rubendell Sart on the second row of the grid. Gemma Scott has found the Dubai boy, Jamie Day.
Jamie, it seems to be a circuit that suits the Aston Martins. We're down here on the second row, of course. The weather seems to be turning a little bit. As a Brit, are you hoping for a bit of rain?
Yeah, hoping for a bit of mixed conditions, spice the race up a little bit, and we'll see how it pans out in the race with both stints. Yeah, looking hopeful for both weather conditions so far.
Thank you very much. Have a great race.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we were talking about that just before we came on air, weren't we, Jake? The weather's now coming from the sea rather than coming from the mountains. We've had all week the the weather bubbling up on the mountains and then dumping its rain on us. Today, it's coming from the sea and being caught at sea level. So it's not rising high enough to get us. We are quite above sea level here at Le Castellet. And so whilst there is cloud cover, a bit of rain, a bit of wind, I'm not sure we're going to see too much rain.
So the JSB Competition Aston Martin, Julien Brichet is going to start the race for them. We just heard from Jamie Day with Gemma Scott. You know, it doesn't seem a day too long ago since we saw Jamie Day as a little karter mixing it on the Dubai Kartdrome in the O-Plate. And there here he is in an Aston Martin for Mirage Racing alongside Ribendell Sart. These guys had a great day yesterday, didn't they? What a start Antoine Potty had in race 1 in the X-Swift Toyota. They charged their way through to the lead of the race and challenged for the victory all the way throughout. They're going to be trying their best to try and have an even better run today. Hopefully they can seal the victory from their point of view. But 5th on the starting grid, that's going to be tough going into turn 1.
Got a few other things to tidy up. We do not have the Jessica and Andreas Bachmann Aston Martin. Unfortunately, they had an issue in race 1 and haven't been able to resolve that issue, so there will be a non-starter in race 2. The other car to non-start is the 67 Marco Lopez Santaloc Audi. That was the car involved in the incident with the 83 machine that caused our safety car period yesterday. The 83 has not declared itself not to be racing, and therefore I think we should have it on the grid, although I can't actually see it on our timing screens. But heavy damage, unfortunately, to the Santaloc Audi, and they haven't been able to repair that for today's race. So Lopez and Petit will not start 45th.
Yeah, I can't see the 83 on the timing list either, so they probably picked up the same or even more damage in that incident. There is Alain Ferté, the legend himself, who has basically done it all as far as sports car racing is concerned. He has eclipsed the Circuit de la Sarthe a couple of times. He is an absolute legend of the sport, and here he is in the Alpine, continuing to drive this fabulous A110's development further and further forward. There is the sister car. Simon Thiemann is going to start the race after Paul Carhartt did a fantastic job in the early part of yesterday. So it's really going to be a fantastic situation for the Alpines, and obviously they do a lot of running here. This was on the way to the starting grid. That's not the best way for Nathan Sharp to make his way to the starting grid. I'd say that needs to be sealed down when you leave the pit lane.
When I left the circuit at half midnight, Allard Racing was still working on their 2 cars. Most of the other awnings in GT4 had been packed away, but Allied Racing burning the midnight hours, and I guess now some duct tape to get that bonnet shut for the Porsches. They didn't really show, other than Veruti in the AM category, who seemed to have a very, very strong run of things. The rest of the Porsches were kind of in the second half of the field, weren't they?
They didn't really gel with Paul Ricard yesterday. However, the change in temperature could actually really help some of those manufacturers and teams that were a little bit lackluster yesterday from their point of view. They could really shapen it up today. And it is a big change in temperature. The circuit temperature itself is about 10 degrees Celsius less at the same time as the start of race 1 yesterday. So this could really factor in for a few of the teams that are struggling in the hotter temperatures. It's going to be a really interesting situation for all of the contenders as they battle away for position.
Just a quick look there at the number 7 machine. Fastest in free practice 1, but caught up in the accident between the 2 Audis at the start of the race in the first encounter yesterday afternoon. They will actually start pretty high up on the grid in row 4, is it, I think? And so expect them, row 5, sorry. They will have hopefully a cleaner first couple of laps and show the kind of performance that they showed in free practice. We had the reference for Aston Martin from them, and unfortunately they were one of very few retirements out of the first race. Not too much damage for that car. They won't be able to return to racing today.
This is the moment we've been waiting for then, as we gear ourselves up ready for the second of the GT4 European Series races. So far, as we mentioned at the start of the show, we've had 3 different race winners from the first 3 races, and they've come from 3 different teams and 3 different manufacturers. If the pole position sitter wins again, as they have done in the first 3 races of the season, then it's going to be a break of that run. However, I mentioned that we've had 3 races and the pole position sitter has won on all 3 occasions. That doesn't really tell you how exciting the racing has been in between. It's been an absolute thrill fest every single time we've gone to battle as the green flag waves and we get ourselves ready for another exciting show in the GT4 European Series, the second race of the weekend. We'll talk you through the starting grid. It's going to be a really exciting battle from the outset. The Hoffa Racing BMW back on pole position again with the winners yesterday, the Racing Spirit of Le Mans Aston in second place. Then JSP competition, the first of the Pro-Am cars, third position, Julien Brichet is going to start the race. Alongside him, Ruben Delsart in the Mirage Aston. Then the ex-Swift Toyota, Etienne Chili, will start with the BCMC East Side Mercedes of Marcel Nertz. The Code Alpine in the Pro-Am category, Loic Villiger starting 7th in front of Alain Ferté in the Autosport Alpine. Then the Mirage Aston of Louis Meric alongside the Autosport Alpine of Simon Thiemann. Florent Grisot in the GBA Aston Martin alongside the AM Superstar. Alban Veruti, 3 wins out of 3 so far. The Borussen Automotive BMW, watch for Tom Edgar as he charges through. Sascha Bottermann in the full motorsport Audi is next. Then Christophe Hamon in the Santalog Audi. Nathan Sharp in the Allied Porsche, hopefully with the bonnet sealed. Speed car Audi of Robert Consani charging his way back from Rodrigue Guillon in the second of the Racing Spirit Le Mans Audis, Aston Martins even. The elite McLaren of Tom Emsen, alongside Sandra Perasuti in the Code Racing Alpine. Then Alexandra Cuneo in the CSA Audi and the Overdrive Porsche of Stefan Postantiev. Then the Toyota Gazoo Racing Sweden car. Hans Holmland is going to be charging through to hand over to Emil Skaddas later. Sergio Pole in the Sorg Rennsport Porsche. Then Chazelle Alpine of Jean-Mathieu Leandri and Will Jenkins, the new boy, in the elite McLaren. Davide Maloney in the W&D BMW and the AGS Events Aston Martin of Vincent Bouteiller. Then the NM Racing Mercedes of Luc Ibanez, the WNS Porsche of Max Kronberg. The GBA Aston of Josh Miller is alongside Niki Ludwiller in the Century Ticino Porsche. Then Jordan Grimo in the Armada Mercedes in the Overdrive Porsche of Joachim Bolting. The Santalog Audi of Cyril Salais alongside the TSR Aston of Marcus Lundstrass. Then the NM Racing Mercedes of Alexander Weintraub alongside the Sorg Rennsport Porsche of Leon Duquer. Then the RMS car of Calais Ward alongside the NM Racing car of Jacob Knoll. The full motorsport Audi of Roman Wozniak and the Eastside Mercedes of Lucas Meyer. Then the V8 Racing Chevrolet of Kenny Heremans to start, alongside Patrick Skug in the Gelarazon Porsche. Then the Allied Porsche of Jordan Wallace alongside the WNS machine of Taylor Hagler. The MBLR BMW of Joachim Walder, the Auto Racing Porsche of Daniel Nielsen. Then the 2 Toyota Gazoo Racing Sweden cars, Niklas Hagberg alongside Mikael Brunhagen. And then the AGS Aston Martin of Nicholas Gomar alongside the Alfa McLaren of Eric Behrens. And at the very back of the grid is the Borussen Automotive BMW of Yagiz Gedik. Watch them charge through.
So it's another story that we haven't covered off yet is the 89 AGS Events Aston Martin all weekend long struggling with brake issues. They think that they have sorted that car out for today's race. They actually had a hardship lap this morning, effectively a lap around the circuit to test whether their brake fix has worked. And it's good to see that finally that 89 car is at the tail of our field, starting on the all but one row with Jedig Gedik at the back of the field after causing a collision in free practice. And that is why the Borussen Automotive BMW is bringing up the rear behind one other car that actually has been given permission to start this race. The 288 Scandinavia GT4 McLaren didn't set a time in Q2, but has been allowed to start this race because they practiced, and actually they did set a time in Q1. Expect that McLaren to make its way up through the field. They're always very, very competitive. And actually we didn't mention the pre-race, if you weren't with us yesterday, we have GT4 Silver Cup, we have Pro-Am, we have Am, we also have GT4 Scandinavia Pro-Am and GT4 Scandinavia Am with us today. They're all mixed in. You can tell the Scandinavian entrants with their numbers 2, and they've got 3 digits in all of their numbers. And really the class of the field with Hans Holman yesterday, other than the fact that he got caught up in an accident and had to retire the Toyota Supra and therefore didn't stand on the top step of the podium. They will want to make amends from that yesterday. They were up in the top 10 in the first part of the race. And again, we'll start way ahead of the rest of the Scandinavians.
So let's see how this all plays out from the start. Piana versus Lachenauer to the first corner is definitely going to be intriguing, considering that both cars are now championship contenders and have both won a race this year. So in the first 3 races of the year, the only other race winner, of course, is the speed car Audi that won the first race of the year for Robert Consani. And
remember, that car's had an engine change.
Yes, it has.
Between free practice and qualifying, so the singing Monza engine maybe not necessarily quite as performant as the one that's now in the car.
We need to watch for the JSB and Mirage Astons on the second row, and for the X-Swift Toyota that got a great start yesterday. Watch for Marcel Lernertz in the BCMC Eastside Mercedes off the start as well from P6. They come off the final turn, and it's green and go. What a start for Gabi Piana. No issues at all. Running to the first corner. Yet another good start for the X-Swift Toyota, as Etienne Shelley looks like he's going to get into fourth position by the time we get to turn one. Is there going to be a clean break for the two Aston Martins further back? As they went through the first chicane, it looked to me as though they were just about going to even it out. They do indeed, but running wide, that's one of the Alpines drifting off, and also the Boddison Automotive BMW of Tom Edgar. He manages to catch it back on again, but as they go down to the chicane for the first time, it's heaven sent for Gabi Piana, the perfect start, and the Toyota has to concede defeat and hang on to fifth position for the time being. From sixth position downwards, it's going to be brave and very tough, as the Alpine actually drives around the outside Loic Villiger to get into sixth position past Lernertz in the Mercedes.
No, he's not going to make that stick. He's on the outside line. He was deep into that corner, and he's going to have to concede that position. It was very frenetic between the Aston Martins, though, wasn't it? But at least 2 of 3 of them have had to take to the off track at turn 2 and rejoin the circuit. Constantin Lachnauer back into second position. There is Loic Villiger in the white Alpine, and it's Alain Fuerte in the black one just behind. But he actually did make that move stick round the Mercedes.
I'm amazed he managed to hold on to it, and off the road goes one of the Audis. So drifting off over the chicane, and is going to have to concede some positions there. The battle's still raging in the middle of the field as everybody tries to settle into position, trying not to trade paint with anyone. You've got a long race, it's an hour, so you've got to make sure you keep a clean car on the first lap. And so far, everybody is keeping their car pointed in the right direction, but it was about this point in race 1 where we had shenanigans. So far, though, Fuerte versus Lernertz. Fuerte keeping it nice and tidy around the outside, but Lernertz is going to have the grunt on the inside of the Mercedes, and he's got through to split the two Alpines for the time being once again.
Yeah, I think Loic Villiger has not got himself up to speed, but he's got the track position, and everyone behind is going, come on, we can go faster than this. The lights flashing from Lernertz. He gets past one of the Alpines, and he wants to get past the other, because there's a big gap between these 5, and then there, look, Laurie's in one lap, it must be 3 or 4 seconds, down the inside from the number 5, but can't find a way through. Delsart stays in 4th.
Yeah, Ruben Delsart trying his best to get through on Julien Brichet, and it's not going to happen on this occasion. So Piana leads the way, Lachenauer second, Brichet third. Look at the final turn as everybody is trying to mix it and pick up a place or two in the brakes. On cold tyres and cold brakes, though, they're trying their best to make it work. So who are the big winners and losers on the first lap? Villiger picked up 6th from Lernertz. Sharp picked up 12th from Veruti. Cunha and Berisuti both managed to make up places on Emsen. Will Jenkins came up to 21st. Butea, Kronberg and Ibanez all moving forward at the expense of Maloney, Humland and Leandri. So some big movers and shakers through the middle of the field, and running wide, that's one of the Porsches drifting off alongside the McLaren. So that has got to be Postanchiev, hasn't it? Running wide alongside with Will Jenkins.
Yeah, bad start for the 77 McLaren. Dropped down to 20th position, but a good start from the 78 up to 21st. So they've come together, the 2 elite McLarens.
And they're still dueling away. That's got to be Jenkins and Postanchiev. So they're still having that battle. 2 Mercedes trading a little bit of paint there. That is Grimaud going wheel to wheel with the WSL car, and one of the bollards has decided to part company from the scene.
They don't last very long, do they? One of the real disappointments, I have to say, of this round is the Chevrolet. We love that Chevrolet Camaro. Kenny Herriman's only 39th position at the moment and didn't have a very good qualifying in either of the races.
Yeah, they did.
Tell you what, we're talking about the weather.
The wind has picked up big time, hasn't it?
If the wind changes, it is going to get us wet, because down looking at turn 1 and beyond, it is very, very dark down there, but the wind is not coming from that direction right now.
So they've got to be mindful of that, as, whoa, very close for Loic Villiger, drifting off the road there. A full chat at Senior. You've got to be so careful to make sure that that car turns in. They've only got an amount of chances before you end up essentially running the gauntlet on track limits. Start of car number 21 is under investigation. That's Leandri in the Alpine, so clearly something not quite right there.
Difficult to really spot, isn't it? Right in the centre of the pack. Alain Fuerte is under investigation as well in the 55 car. Look at the back shot. That's the mountains that I've been talking about, with some heavy rain falling in the mountains, but hopefully not going to get us. Maybe the weather's just going over us for the moment. Look at the gap, though. Piana, so strong in qualifying in this number 2. Lachnauer is now nearly 2 seconds back, and a bit of a gaggle of Aston Martins there. The question mark is, can Shrey match the performance of Piana in his second stint, because he hasn't so far in qualifying.
Yeah, it's been very tricky for Shrey to get at the same sort of pace as Piana consistently. He's had his moments, but they managed to get the victory last time out at Monza, of course. If he can, oh, that's a problem for the other Allied. We had the 22 having its problems on the way to the grid, and I'm afraid that's the other one pulling off and retiring. So that is Wallace, who has come to a stop on the way out of the final turn by the look of it. They missed the way into the pits.
A tricky one to recover, because they're at a gap, but they're kind of parallel to it rather than in front of it to be able to push the car back. It's quite a relatively safe place to park.
I'd say that's a potential virtual safety car rather than a full safety car there. Now the 78 car, that's Will Jenkins of McLaren, must give back 3 positions. He cut the course and gained a position by doing so. In fact, he gained quite a few positions by the look of it. Well done to the marshals. We won't even need a VSC.
Great work, such as the cars all bunched up together, a little hole in the traffic to allow the marshals to do their job. And a lot of training actually happens here.
Oh, another one.
That's a Mercedes off the circuit, and that's coming on to the Mistral straight.
Now, which Mercedes is that? I wonder if that's Mayer. We'll have to double check as they come through, but certainly one car has fallen out of the fray. Or is it Ward, actually? No, Ward has come through. Well, it's either Van Schrub or Grimo.
Yeah,
Grimo's
Van
come through.
Schrub makes sense, because it's that colour of car.
Yeah, it's Van Schrub. So Van Schrub, unfortunately, has gone off the road there at the same place that we lost the Barwell Lamborghini in the GT3 race yesterday. Unfortunately, that's where Van Schrub has parked the Mercedes. I don't think he parked it by choice. I think he may have been given an assistance to the scene of the said parking. So problems there.
Yeah, Safronov shares that car with Alexandra Van Trub for NM Racing. They were really strong yesterday, right up in the thick of things. So that's very, very disappointing that their day has been ended in the gravel trap. All 53 cars that started out on circuit, and only 1 stationary right now.
Well, 2, if you consider the Mercedes as well. So I don't know whether Van Schrub's got going again.
Yes, because of course Wallace has pulled that car. And that car didn't even qualify, did it? It had to have permission to start race 1. So they've really not had a very fun weekend, Allied Racing.
Well, the fans watching along stating that rain is coming. They maybe perhaps know something we don't, but we're still keeping an eye on it. The wind here has picked up, but we don't think it's traveling in the right direction for the rain to actually hit us. It's going to be nearby, but we don't think it's actually going to hit the circuit at this point. There is the number 3. That's Robert Consani, who drove such brilliantly at Monza. They're currently in the middle of it. They're in 17th position at the moment, behind the Morrison Automotive BMW of Tom Edgar.
And sits second in the championship, 3 points off Shrey and Piana after yesterday's race. Equal on points with Berke Bessler and Tom Edgar, would you believe, in 3rd in the championship in the Silver Cup. Now, they're not having... Where are they now? They're 16th position. Tom Edgar making his way up through the field after qualifying.
It's all about consistency, of course, in this championship. When you're not winning, that's where you really get to showcase what you can do. It's all very well to win the odd race here and there or get the odd podium, but it's how many times you finish in the points over the course of a season. Side by side, we've got Alpine versus Aston Martin heading towards us. That's the GPA car. Losing out, a bit of a moment there from the 72 of Grisot, and that's going to allow not only Schaap to get through, but also that was Veruti, wasn't it?
That's the Porsche of Veruti, battle for 2nd in AM, moving up to, I think, probably even 11th position for that, because they were scrapping with the Allied Porsche as well. Actually, the Allies checked out, but Veruti is going very defensive, because he obviously knows that this is a battle for position. Now, who's that? That's the 42 crawling all over him. That's Christophe Amon, who is a very strong AM driver, probably as strong, if not stronger, than Veruti, who, remember, has to do the whole race himself. His teammate Petit at Le Mans for the test date, and therefore he's been left to the GT4 on his own, and gets forced off the circuit by a very late-breaking move from Christophe Amon.
And I think he's going to complete this as he goes down the straight. Mind you, the side draft is going to help out Veruti here. to assert himself into turn 1. But watch for Robert Consani. Consani's going to have his look over the inside. He's taken a little bit of a panel bashing on the left front, but he's going to dive up the inside of Veruti and make that stick. So he'll now slot in, as it were, behind Christophe Hamon for the time being.
Good place to be as well. The two of them can work together as they move up through the pack from 13th position as they are right now. But Alain Fuerte leads that AM category, and he's actually up in 8th position. So that's the first time we've seen Fuerte really showing his hand. He's did a bit of racing pre-GT4 season in some endurance races to gain experience in what it was like to be in a GT4 car. Quite different to the things that he used to race at Le Mans, and even the experience he's had. He said he's never retired. He just keeps on racing. Now very much in his 60s, and a double AM lineup with Laurent Hergon now passing the threshold and moving into being a bronze. Consani down the inside. Lovely clean move to get past Amon.
Yep, textbook, no issues at all with that. He's going to drift a little bit wide on the exit out of the right-hander, but he shuts down the radius quite nicely. So Christophe Hamon is going to have to try and come back at him. Further up the road, you've got another Audi. That is the car from Full Motorsports, Sascha Botman, trying to make the move. This has got interesting.
Has got right onto the tail of Piana. Now, is this Lachnauer starting to find pace? He set the fastest lap of the race last time through. I actually think it's Piana who made a mistake on the last lap. Of 14.889 is some half a second slower than Lachnauer, and 0.4 of a second slower than Piana has managed previously. So now, fight for the lead. Piana with victory in Monza, and Lachnauer with victory yesterday.
So this is definitely going to be not just a duel for the race victory, but also potentially the continuation of the duel for the title. That grey cloud doesn't look good, does it? But it's actually beyond the circuit, so that may not necessarily affect us. As up to the first corner, Brichet still there in 3rd position watching on as Lachnauer gets the blinkers on, tries to get Gabriele Piana outfoxed here as they continue to battle. The Hofer by Bong BMW and the racing spirit of Le Mans, Aston Martin, continuing their way through. I say Le Mans because it's not Le Mans. It is definitely Lake Le Mans in Switzerland that car is based by.
The way you can tell is that, well, it's one word rather than two,
Indeed.
And there's no S at the end of Le Mans as a town, medieval town up north, rather than Le Mans as a lake down south.
Indeed. We got a great battle for 3rd as well. The JSP competition, the leaders in Pro-Am, Julien Brichet trying desperately to shake off Ruben Del Sart in the Mirage Aston. Now this is definitely the number 5 Mirage Aston's best race so far. They're up in 4th position, looking good for a podium. This is where the opportunity is going to come in from Konstantin Lachnauer. He's going to try and have a look at Gabriele Piana. This is BMW versus Aston. He's going to pull out. He's going to try and make the move. Piana's not going to fight it too much on the inside line, but can the Aston Martin commit under the braking zone? Yes, he can. Lovely move from Konstantin Lachnauer. The lead changes, and the winners yesterday have taken the lead today.
Didn't need to fight it, didn't feel like he needed to fight it, and potentially can fight back now with the slipstream of that BMW, but it doesn't look like it's got the legs at the moment against the Aston Martins. And the other two fighting with Brichet and Del Sart have allowed Lachnauer that sort of breathing space to clear off ahead of them. They're still at it, but without Lachnauer, who's made that gap and put himself in the lead.
We've had a change for position for 3rd. Ruben Del Sart has got through past Julien Brichet, so the Mirage crew have got into 3rd position, looking at their first podium of the season if they can hold on to this. There is the X-Swift Toyota behind Brichet as well, so Etienne Chilly hoping to move his way up into 4th position and take him on. And then we've got that long cavalry of cars, haven't we, in 6th downwards. Villiger, Lenertz, Ferte, Merrick, Tillerman, Botterman and Sharp, who have all distanced themselves a little bit. The gap between those cars is now about 5.5 seconds or so, but it's still very tight to figure out who's going to finish where, 6th position downwards. And then, of course, don't forget, we've still got Consani and Amon trying to shake off Tom Edgar, who's now got past Alban Veruti in the Porsche, and he's trying to chase after them.
And moreover, in about 10 minutes' time, all of these drivers are getting out, and we'll have a new set of drivers in, and the performance of the cars completely change again. So don't think that this is all said and done. At a minute 35, we open the pit lane for 10 minutes, and all these drivers have to come in and give their cars to the second drivers. They have to be stationary in the pits for 88 seconds plus any success ballast, any success time, that they may have gained from results in previous races. We do have 1 or 2 teams on their last warning. They used their joker for going under that 88-second time in race 1. So if they do it in race 2 as well, they will get a penalty.
So now this battle really is kicking up a gear. Ibanez has worked his way up to 20th position on the last lap, past Postanchiev and Paulet in their Porsches. So he's now broken into the top 20 for the first time. And Heremans in the Chevy has worked his way up to 33rd as well, at the expense of Ward, who drops to 35th in his Mercedes. Still the only two cars that are not circulating are Van Trub and Wallace, both drivers out of the race. Fortunately, it didn't cause too much of a problem. However, we've got an incident under investigation, and that is Yegis Gidig, the Borissan Automotive BMW, and the 44 car. That is the car that came to a stop, Wallace. So apparently that is being investigated at turn 15. So we think the Borissan Automotive BMW may have had something to do with Wallace's retirement. As up the inside, that's a lovely overtake there from Alain Ferte to get back through on Lenertz. Lenertz tries to hold it round the outside, and watch for Merrick, who's having a much longer race than they had yesterday. They were taken out in the number 7 Mirage Aston on the first lap, if you remember, and now they are trying their best to work their way back forward to follow Alain Ferte, but it's not quite so easy. Lenertz is keeping that Mercedes as wide as possible.
I love how confident Fuerte is. Once he's made that move, he gets back onto the racing line, doesn't worry about defending, just head down and pursue. Look,
but he's got a penalty though. Ferte has been given a penalty for being out of position at the start. That's a 5-second penalty. Now that will be added to his pit stop.
Yeah, exactly. So it'll just be a bit longer stationary. And remember, actually, yesterday, some of our teams were 5 seconds slower in the pits because it was so busy in the pit lane. They were nowhere near that target of 88. So it's not too much of a punishment for Alain Fuerte. Side by side, down the inside into turn 1, Merrick on Lenertz, and he gets that done too.
Yeah, very nicely done. The Astons really seem to have good confidence on the brakes here at Paul Ricard. They can come from a fair way back. I mean, even the move from Lachenauer on Piana, it was quite tough to know if that Aston was actually going to stop, and it manages to do so very comfortably under brakes. It certainly seems to suit the Paul Ricard circuit. We said a few weeks ago, didn't we, that the car to have really... oh, contact! And 2 cars spin around, and that's going straight into the side of this Sandlock Alley. Thank goodness that they just avoided the contact. Christophe Hamon was very quick to react there as Nathan Sharp pirouetted around. So Sharp and Consani connecting.
Both getting underway again, but Consani's lost 5, 6, 7, 8 places. Actually, Consani hasn't got going again. Sharp has got going and lost 7 or 8 positions. We're still waiting for Consani to get over the next, but there is...
Oh, look at that. That's proper crabbing.
That's more than a tyre, isn't it? I'm afraid. That is a tracking arm on the rear suspension of that Porsche.
Yeah, that's a stop the car, otherwise we're going to have an even bigger repair job. So both cars have stopped. Robert Consani's not going any further. Nathan Sharp did get going, but it's quite clear that that car is not even going to make it back to the pits, never mind finish the race.
Consani gets rolling again, but that's the winners of our first race of the season. Almost dominators the whole weekend in Monza, and it's going to be far less points this weekend. Have they got damage? The Audi R8 sitting low. What happened there?
Oh my word, he came from absolutely nowhere.
Well, Consani was off the track effectively and cutting the turn, and Sharp turned in on the track, and there was a car already on that piece of tarmac.
You know what, I don't think that was an overtake. I think he knew he was missing his braking point by a couple of meters and think, do you know what, I'm going to need to take to the curb here to avoid the contact, and unfortunately he couldn't avoid the contact.
Not a fun weekend for Allied Racing. One car parked up at the end of the lap, and then another one really should be parked up rather than trying to limp back to the pits, but he's doing a job of it anyway.
Yeah, there's absolutely no percentage, is there, to trying to get that car back to the pits. You may as well just park it, and then it's less for the mechanics to do on the way to Spa. But hey, he's the driver. He knows what he's doing. As out in front, Konstantin Lachenauer in front of Gabriele Piana and Ruben Del Sart, as the top 3 remains the same, and we get ever closer to the pit stop window. This is where things are really going to shake up.
The characteristic of this race and what we saw also in Monza versus last year is actually remarkable. These drivers are driving this race far more like an endurance race and behaving far more like an endurance race than the kind of the sprint panic that we saw over the last couple of years. You know, and that is reflecting in the way that Piana and Lachenauer behaved in the overtake, and what we saw just a second ago between Merrick and Lenertz. They're not forcing each other off. They're not trying to get their elbows out and battle like touring cars. There's obviously been a kind of a law laid down by race control this year, and it's doing a great effect because we're seeing good racing and clean and respectful racing, very few kind of silly things happening. They're really looking incredibly professional racers this year.
That's the thing, though, isn't it, about GT racing? It's meant to be pure. It's meant to be about the technology and the driving standards. It's not meant to be crash bang wallop racing, is it? It happens occasionally. We know that, because if you ask two racing drivers to play with the same bit of racetrack, occasionally it's going to happen. So let's have a look. See, I think there's a problem with the Audi. I don't think that's Consani's driving. I think something went wrong on the Audi to force him into the side of the Porsche.
Consani's also in the blind spot of Schnapp. He would have been able to see that he was there. He was actually so far to the inside that he was completely blind. And I think Schnapp turned in. Consani tried to get out of the way and by cutting the track, and unfortunately they made a collision. Either way, both of them, I think, are out of the race now.
Edgar's just made the move on Botterman. So Edgar has now managed to get himself into 11th position. So a very good charge forward. Now, here we go. Piana has come back in on Lachenauer. Lachenauer had extended the gap to 0.8 of a second on the last lap. It's definitely not 0.8 of a second anymore, is he? He's managed to come very close to him as they now charge down the straight. I think he's cut that gap very nearly in half. It's now half a second. So these guys are continuing to trade sector times and push each other. There's no respite for the racing spirit of Le Mans Aston up front.
It's a really dramatic backdrop, isn't it? Around the mountains we usually are able to see. They're not there at the moment. They're covered in black cloud. And these guys will see that as they go up the Mistral Straight. They'll be thinking and monitoring and hoping that they can get to the pit window. Ideally, you get to the pit window and you change tyres, as we saw it in Formula 1 in Monte Carlo just a week ago. You don't really want to make a second pit stop to change tyres, but also historically in GT4, we have seen safety cars and red flags if weather hits hard, because race control want it to be as safe as possible. They don't want lots of drivers being on the wrong tyre in the wrong conditions out on circuit, because all you're doing is asking for trouble. And we did see that, I think it was in Hockenheim last year, where as soon as the rain came, we got very excited about what that was going to throw up. A few guys went into the pits early and changed onto wets, and then the red flag was thrown to allow everybody else to do so. So you've got to remember that as a team manager. That's what happened last year. If we do get rain, we don't want to jump too early, because if we jump too early before the red flag, that will completely compromise our race. Pit is going to open in 3 minutes.
Gedik getting a penalty as well. The Borusan Automotive BMW getting a 10-second time penalty for causing a collision. The stewards have decided that the incident between him and Wallace was at the door of Gedik. Borusan Automotive BMW. So unfortunate there, that's going to be 10 seconds. And again, that'll be added to their pit stop when they are stationary. So that's really going to hamper their progress. They've worked their way up from the back of the grid, 53rd position, to 35th. And all that hard work is just going to be undone. They'll go right back to the tail of the field again. So nobody's going to be coming into the pits this lap. They will, however, be starting to come into the pits on the next lap.
If they think that's the right thing to do. Remember, we do have in the AM category, we do have the AMs in the cars right now, so we will expect to see those guys come in early, but we've got so many silvers and we've got so many AM category drivers. There's no real benefit in pitting early versus late. You didn't have to really read the traffic and work it out. It's not clear cut. We need to get the slower guy out and put the faster guy in.
See, look at the difference in lap times between the Aston Martin and the BMW. There's nothing in it, really. They've managed to gain a little bit more time, Gabriele Piana on lap 9, but essentially they are trading sectors. They are pushing each other back to the rope once again in the hope that one of the others is going to make a mistake and it's going to be them that benefits. So it's a real grudge match between the two of them in the sectors.
The tricky thing is for Piana, and they'll know this as Team Bonk, remember who was so fast in qualifying. Victor Weyrick was 0.8 of a second faster.
That's the Alfa McLaren.
Everybody else. And so, yes, we've got a damaged McLaren limping around the circuit.
So what actually happened to the Alfa McLaren? Let's have a look. Making the move on the inside of the Mercedes of the 87. It's brave. It's not going to happen. It's a pirouette around. Good try on Grimaud.
And it's not damage. It's a bollard that he's disposed of. I thought that was maybe a floor or a bit of bumper, but
yeah, it's under the car.
Yeah, the bollard,
he's taking it with him.
It goes. It disappears around now, I think, the bollard parts company, so he can carry on. No damage. Great.
Yeah, that was absolutely fine in terms of the damage for the car. Obviously, he reaped what he sowed. And into the pits straight away, we've got our first pit stop, and that comes from the Audi of Soleil. So Soleil has come into the pits. He's the first one to jump.
Yeah, but that's before the window. So that's not going to count. He's obviously got either picked up a penalty, picked up a puncture, or some damage to that car. He will have to come in again to register that pit stop.
Yeah, Katsani's managed to bring the car back to the pits, as did Nathan Schaap, actually. They both brought it back into the pits, but I don't think either driver's going any further. Far too much damage for that car. I think they just wanted to give their mechanics a little bit easier of a job of recovering it over the course of the day so that they can drive home with their tails between their legs. Firmly disappointed. But out in front, it is still Aston Martin versus BMW. It is still Racing Spirit of Le Mans versus Hoffa Racing by Bonk. And it is still Konstantin Lachenauer versus Gabi Piana. This could run all the way to the flag when their teammates take over.
So if I'm a team manager right now, I'm looking at those clouds, looking at the radar, looking at the flags in the paddock, seeing if the wind is changing at all. Is it going to affect the? Is that rain going to affect us? And do I therefore hang on and wait until I pit the cars right at the end of the window?
There goes the Toyota. Etienne Chilly has picked up the move on Julien Brichet. It's going to keep him in 4th position in class, obviously, but it moves him to 4th position overall. And so the silver Toyota has got through into P4. Very good work indeed there from Etienne Chilly. He's been hustling Julien Brichet for quite some time now. And up into 4th position he goes. That was a fairly textbook first corner overtake. No major concerns there for the team. But they are trying to keep in the hunt, and if they manage to get it right with Antoine Poty goes into the car, another podium could well be on them off.
It's interesting that Julien Brichet is the AM in the Pro-Am category car, because Julien's done, in my mind, a lot more kind of European level racing. His brother Florian is the 2nd driver in that car. Pit window is now open, so we are now allowing cars into pit lane, and those AM drivers will start coming in, usually at the tail of the field first.
Yep, we've got Lutvaller in, we've got Meyer in, we've got Noll in as well. We've got 2 of the Scandinavian GT4 drivers into the pits. Valda and Roos have both decided to duck in for the pits this time. So it's all busy, it's all action and activity down here in pit lane. As coming to a stop, there is the 45th position car. That is Noll in the Mercedes. He gets out of the car.
Disappointing weekend really for NM. They've been championship challengers in the past. Lucky Benez only 16th. You would expect a bit more from them and the Mercedes team. And obviously this 16 car down in 45th position.
And the sister car, of course, out of the race. Alexander Vantra, who went off on lap 2. So very unfortunate there. They're really hoping for a much better change of fortunes at the Spa 24 Hours, aren't they? There is the Borisson Automotive BMW of Tom Edgar going through the picture. Hamon is up to 12th position past Bottemar. And then we've got Varuti, Perasuti and Ibanez in the Mercedes at the back of the queue. So at least one of the NM Racing Mercedes looks relatively competitive.
Yeah, but you'd expect them to be well up. The 16th is not competitive for them. They are better than that.
I did say relatively.
Yeah, they've had really good results. They've won races. They've fought for championships. Varuti being attacked there by Perasuti, different classes of car, but Perasuti, a silver driver, and as we've mentioned already, Varuti, the only driver in the field to do it all himself, and he would usually have a teammate, that teammate at Le Mans this weekend, and therefore he's got a penalty for being the only driver in that car. We'll still have to pit, we'll still have to go through the whole procedure, but he will then go back out onto circuit for the second part of the race.
Grisod runs wide, trying to defend from Bastanchiev, and that's going to cost him not just the place to Bastanchiev, but it's also going to let Will Jenkins and maybe even Paulet in the Porsche come through as well. He's going to try and get back on terms with the McLaren as he drifts around the outside. He's going to be in a rock and a hard place here, and he drifts and loses another place. That's just the staunch defensive tactic that's really cost him dear. And unfortunately, he hasn't just lost 1 position, he's lost 3, and he might lose a 4th if he leaves that door wide open for Tom Emson, which he does! There was a little bit of rubbing there between the left rear of the McLaren and the right front of the Aston Martin, but I'm afraid Grisod just trying to defend a little too aggressively there. He just caught him out, didn't he? He was in the wrong place at the wrong time, unfortunately. Overtaking moves elsewhere. Looks as though we've had a passing manoeuvre from Kenny Heremans. He got the move on David Maloney on the last lap, and also a move from Josh Miller in the other GPA Aston. So both GPA Astons having battles. Oh, the McLaren's had a problem coming out of the turn. That's a big difficulty for Will Jenkins. I wonder if they've just hit trouble. Either that or he missed a gear, and it's cost him big time because he's lost 3 places, but definitely Will Jenkins in the McLaren He has lost big momentum coming off the turn, and now side by side round the outside comes Tom Emsen as he goes wheel to wheel with the 93 Porsche of Sergio Paulet. Paulet's going to hold it on the inside line though. So that's going to be well held by the Sorg Rennsport Porsche number 93, and he's going to be in the lead of the quartet for the moment.
Yeah, he was at the back of the quartet half a lap ago, wasn't he? I think that just seems to have been an intermittent issue for the 78 machine. He's back up to speed again. It's not as though you're clutching and changing gear with a stick, so it's hard to miss a gear, but sometimes the electrics don't quite click into place. Or he selected a gear, it didn't happen, and therefore he was in the wrong gear coming out of the chicane. Either way, he bolts for the pit lane. Along with the other of the cars in this group, and so 4 becomes 2.
So into the pits then came both Emsen and Grisot. So Grisot came in, so did Jenkins. Leandri did come into the pits as well, so did Perisuti and Tierman in the Alpines, Hamon in the Audi, and Alban Veruti in the Porsche of the Bigner players. Etienne Schilly in the Toyota was the first one of the top 6 to blink. So there is the very busy pit lane. And they'll obviously want to check out Will Jenkins in the McLaren there. He gets out of the car and hands over the machine, but they'll be keeping an eye on that car, won't they? Just to double check there isn't anything particularly terminal. And that looks a little bit terminal. The Toyota looks like it's on 3 wheels. Yep, there it is. There is the 4th wheel, and they're facing the wrong way.
Well, they would. If the wheel comes off, you're going to spin, aren't you?
Well, that's a very difficult situation to get out of, and it's in a very precarious position. Good recovery, considering.
Well, the car is being well recovered into the center of the track. There's loads of different layouts there, so super safe. But they still will need to try and get that tyre. And we're in the middle of the pit stop phase. This is always so tricky for race control because they don't want to affect the race by throwing a safety car or a slow period during the pit stop phase and favouring those that have already pitted. So they try not to do so, but sometimes you're forced to.
That was Michael Brunhagen who had the problem, and now we're in traffic. So this is going to be awkward for the leaders because that is the number 11 of Enzo Juliet, the Borissan Automotive car that's now been able to get back into position, and they're going into the pits. They're choosing this opportunity now to come in.
Because this would have been a slow lap. This would have been a lap that was compromised.
So they both came in. They both came in. So they're racing in the pits.
And Etienne Schilly's already pitted in the Toyota, so they are on a different part of the circuit. Did they have clear track? Romain Monti. The wheel has been recovered. These marshals are doing a great job on Sunday here at Circuit Paul Ricard. I'm just waiting to see if Monti was in traffic when he came out the pits or not. Perfect pit stop, a 88-second pit stop for them, but he is in traffic.
So here we go. They're at 2 opposite ends of the pit lane now, these 2 crews, the Bonk BMW and the Racing Spirit of Le Mans Aston.
I don't know why I said Romain Monti. He was in that car last year. He's not in a Toyota anymore. He's in a Mercedes.
It's Schilly and Botti, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Botti is behind the wheel, and that's obviously going to give him the best chance to charge their way forward. Into the lead goes Ruben Del Sart in the Aston ahead of Julien Brichet, and Marcel Lenertz in the Mercedes now is elevated to 3rd position for the time being. But now it really is a race in the pit lane to see who is going to get out first. I wonder actually, Emil Scalas has come out onto the circuit in the fastest of the Toyota Gazoo Racing Sweden cars. So I wonder if they're going to be able to make their way forward. It's a lot of time to make up.
Yellow flag at the last sector of the lap as well. So there's plenty of things going on circuit, which is going to slow cars down. Here is Antoine Potti in the number 8. Early pit stop for him. Another Toyota Supra exits the pits from the Scandinavian team that should still be leading that, I would have thought. But look at the gap. The number 2 comes out in the lead. So back ahead, actually, Schrey ahead of Rarick, so that's been jumped. That's a jump in the pits, isn't it?
Yeah, the BMW crew were lighter on their feet, so they managed to jump Victor Weyrich, Aston Martin. But out in 3rd position, there is the Toyota. They didn't quite manage to catch up, but they are going to be on a faster lap than these 2 cars, so they're not that far away. The Toyota might be able to jump forward here to 3rd position. Look at the time they've gained. They've done a very good job, the X-Swift Toyota crew. Antoine Potti pushing it on his outlap on clear track, and he's been able to gain a lot on the 2 cars up front.
Yeah, that was key. Pitting and finding yourself space. And the reason why it's changed is that Victor Rehrick and the Racing Spirit of Le Mans team giving away 2.1 seconds in the pits to the Bonk Motorsport crew, who banged in their pit stop at exactly 88 seconds. A few cars under that 88, 27.3 for instance for Carton. And in comes the number 5 machine now.
In fact, the top 3 have all come in. Delsart, Brisha and Lenertz, they've all come into the pits together now, because we're getting towards the end of the pit stop window, of course.
Remember I said the pit stop needs to be 88 seconds. Quite a few teams in the 87-second region. One team in the 86, and therefore that will be a penalty. And I'm afraid that is, I think I'm right in saying that the number 30 Porsche.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's not gone well at all, is it? The 18 Aston Martin is going to come a cropper for that pit stop time as well.
Yeah, so it's the 18 Aston, that's what...
Oh, and off the road! Off the road goes Wayrick! Wayrick goes off the road! What's happened to the Aston Martin? Oh my goodness! Victor Wayrick, they've had trouble on the outlap. So that is disastrous for Victor Wayrick in the Racing Spirit of Le Mans Aston. They've hit trouble on the outlap, and that is the win well and truly gone. Well, disastrous. We're not entirely sure what it is that's caused that problem, but they're going to concede not just the victory, but also second position, as here comes the cavalry. There is Ribendell Sart going down the straight. Are they going to jump ahead of the BMW? Surely not.
They won't have enough momentum, but they might get themselves cleanly into second position here. Jamie Day, a really good pit stop at the end of the window.
So they almost took the lead back from the BMW, not quite able to overhaul them, but Antoine Poty is now there in third position, charging like Billy O. De Fulgencio has moved up into fourth position as a result. But what has happened as Victor Wayrick comes back into the pits? So no. Disaster for the Aston Martin crew.
So is this a problem? Let's have a look at the pit stop, what they're going to look at. Has he got a puncture? No, it looks as though...
It's the right rear they're inspecting.
No, right front. Right front is what they're looking at. They have to put the jack in the rear of the car to hydraulically pressurize the installed jacks. Now they're looking at the left front.
There's something wrong with the axle, maybe.
Oh, what a shame. Konstantin Lachnow was such a strong first stint, just playing himself in, knowing that Victor Rehrick would be super, super strong in that car, but not if the car falters.
Oh, what a shame. That
Breathing space for Michael Schrey then.
Yep, definitely helps. And they've actually now, the leaders have actually managed to put Hedberg in one of the Toyota Gazoo Racing Sweden cars in between them and the Mirage Aston. So they have left them to their own devices. Jamie Day is now going to struggle to shake off Antoine Poty. This is going to be a real test for the teenage superstar from Dubai. What's he going to be able to do to shake him off?
Windscreen wipers on the Toyota.
Yep, I think we've got some rain on the far side of the circuit. It's worth looking out to the grandstands to see if there are rain spots. There are spots of rain on our commentary box here on the main straight as well. Windscreen wipers are starting to come on for everybody. It has hit the circuit with 23 minutes to go. This is when things are going to get very interesting.
Yeah, but it's only light rain at the moment. It's nothing that's going to affect the grip level, but it is going to affect the confidence level of these drivers, not knowing exactly what they've got underneath them.
And we know how quickly it can go from light rain to heavy rain at Paul Ricard, so it could happen in the matter of seconds, but certainly for the time being, light rain hitting the circuit here on the main straight. Let's not get panicky about this. This is definitely not going to be enough water to come down on the circuit to need to change tyres. They're going to still be able to run with it, but as you can see, Michael Schrey, who's taken over that car, is now tentatively on the windscreen wipers on the front.
Into the pits, Julien Brichet, or Florian Brichet from third position. That is the second pit stop for that car, and that, I believe, will be potentially jumping for wet tyres. We're hearing that the 74 car retired with a steering problem. That makes sense because he didn't manage to make it round the first couple of turns. But is this a problem for the 24 in the pits, or is this them going for wet tyres?
Is this a gamble?
It's a very early gamble.
Well, there's barely any water on the circuit at all. Or were they having a slow puncture?
And remember what we said, JSB Competition weren't part of this championship last year. They may not have known what race control do, but this, you know, they've got 5 studs to take off each of those tyres. It takes a long time.
So teams are indeed preparing wet tyres down in the pits, but that's a very early gamble indeed for Julien Brichet if they've decided that's what they're going to do this time.
And they're also under investigation for their pit stop time, Their pit stop time is a 38.
More
Very
cars coming
slow.
back in. More cars coming back in. That's the Borisson Automotive BMW back in.
Well, they've got nothing to lose. They've had a really tough day down there.
Oh, look at it on the back
33rd
straight.
Position. Yes, it is raining on the back straight.
And it's getting heavier. So it's really tricky for Michael Schrey to hold on to the car through Senior. And as they get down into the braking zone, this is where things are going to get really tricky, because obviously at this part of the course, on the run down the Mistral, there's very little grip at all. They drift out wide on the run out of the Bourret.
And don't forget what these stripes are. They are high grip tarmacs. There's more grip on those blue stripes than there is on the circuit half the time. And it's not like paint like you would expect in most circuits around the world.
Right, it looks like the 11 is into the pits for wet tyres as well. That's also Juliet. So it looks like everybody's going to be coming back into the pits on this occasion. Jamie Day drifts off the road and thinks, do you know what? This isn't worth it. Come into the pits. The Toyota carries on. So the Mirage Aston Martin thinks, right, we're going to go on wet tyres. If they've caught this right and they've done it a lap earlier than the two leaders, this is going to come back to them. But look at Antoine Potti. He is caught right up to Michael Schrey. This race has suddenly become grandstand stuff, because we've got 20 minutes to go. The rain is coming down and the grip levels are reducing rapidly.
Confidence is key, so key now to get the best out of your car. The more you work the car, the more temperature you build.
Heavy rain on the straight. It's getting heavier. This might be an absolute steal by Mirage Racing. Through to the chicane again. There's very little grip down the main straight, certainly into turns 1 and 2. Up towards 3 and 4, it still seems relatively dry, but it's when you get back onto the Mistral and up to that chicane, that's where the grip completely disappeared on the previous lap, and it's just going to get worse from here as the heavy rain comes down on the main straight, and it's in 2/3 of the circuit, but it's that bottom end up by Virage du Camp and Virage du Hotel. That's where there's not a lot of rain yet, but it's going to get that way. Look at Michael Schrey trying to defend Antoine Potti down to the braking zone, holding the BMW in the middle of the road. That's where you've just got to keep it nice and steady under the brakes. And look at the Toyota swarming around all over the shop.
Brechet was the first car to come into the pits. Hasn't really shown any extra pace on those wet tyres that he's got on the car versus those slick shod runners. Better grip from the Aston Martin coming on to the second part of the Mistral straight. And can he just go all the way around the outside? Of course, offline has got more grip than online. And so it is easier to do a pass around the outside at Senior when it's wet like this. Don't stay on the racing line. You want to move off of it, because there's 6 hours of GT3 grip on that racing line as well from last night.
Antoine Potti in the X-Swift Toyota takes the lead with 18.5 minutes to go, but there's a big gamble. Do you stay out there in the hope that it's going to be reasonable grip, or do you come in for wet tyres like some of their competitors have? Jamie Day decided, right, we can go for wet tyres and we'll pick up some speed. Not everybody has come in. There is some rooster tails coming up from certain parts of the car, but this is a bit like Hockenheim 2000 in Grand Prix. Some parts of the circuit are dry enough for the slicks, others are not.
And they carry on. They do not come into the pits. I think the BMW is mirroring what the Toyota is doing here.
They're just trying to hedge their bets and stay out. If you can stay out, it's going to be a really interesting situation, because a lot of the teams are actually thinking, do you know what? We shouldn't pit. We just keep it going.
The other thing to consider is the pit stop time for JSB was 3 minutes long. So 3 minutes is over a lap, well, it's about a lap and a half it takes to get the wheels off and put the wheels on. Can you gain that much time back
in 17.5 minutes?
In 17.5 minutes being on the wet tyre? I'm not sure you can, even if JSB, so what's JSB's last lap time?
Well, the key is this part of the circuit. Look, on the way through towards Virage du Hotel, Virage du Camp, look, there's no water, essentially. There's no grease at this point of the course at all. There's plenty of grip at the bottom of the hill. It's on the main straight and it's on the run through Senior. That's where the wettest part of the circuit is. So it's half and half. It's 50-50. So is that worth the gamble to go to wet tyres? At this moment, it probably isn't. Car 35 gained an advantage. Going off track, they're under investigation. That's Hugo de Sadelier. They're running in 6th position now, the second Alpine, behind Antoine Leclerc. And Robert Carton is in the pits. So the other Mirage Aston decided to come into the pits as well. This is a big gamble.
It's not worth it looking at JSB's performance. Florian Brechet is only 2 seconds faster in the last sector and he's obviously losing time in the first sector without having slick tyres. So they're only running 15 seconds slower than they were in dry conditions. We haven't got enough time to make that back because it takes so long to change the tyres in GT4 racing. There's not one central hub with a big, fat, fast wheel gun.
Right, the stewards have now said wet track, lights on. And Berkay Bessler has brought the Borusan Automotive BMW back into the pits. They're going to change tyres now. Well, this is a fascinating...
You're asking a lot of your drivers in this last sector. It's so slippery. Grégoire Gilbert going through shot. There is Veruti still in 7th position.
Big wash. A big washout from Gaël Castelli. What a save. That was a big, big moment going through Senior. Just about held it. But it's going to get wetter from here, and it's going to get harder to save that kind of moment.
Where's Jamie Day's first lap out the pits?
It was a 2:31.8, so it's actually 5 seconds slower than Potty and Schrey are currently doing. It's that bottom of the hill dry patch that's keeping them off the tail.
Sector 2 is a 43-second sector. Jamie Day doing the same as Antoine Potty through that sector. They're on different tyres.
So it's turning out, unless it gets really, really wet in the next 5 minutes, it's not going to be worth the gamble. And even then, the gap that they've made up over that time, I don't think you're going to get that back in 10 minutes. So it's going to be tough to run on the slick tyres, of course, but in terms of the amount of time lost coming into the pits, in terms of the amount saved staying on track, I think staying on track is the better call.
Veruti looks to the outside here. He's up in 6th position overall now.
That's amazing.
Is Veruti, with Henry de Sadler just ahead of him.
So de Sadler is under investigation, so that could end up becoming 5th position overall, which is quite incredible, really, when you consider that the leading cars in all 3 classes of the regular GT4 European Series are going to find themselves in the top 5 if this keeps going. There's the opportunity from the Mirage car to try and get through. That's one of the 2 Mirage cars that's obviously pitted and changed to wet tyres. Here we go. This is the Borusan Automotive BMW unlapping itself from Michael Schrey. So that's the difference now on wet tyres.
But Schrey's struggling in these conditions. Potty's gone 2 seconds a lap faster in the first sector alone.
And that's the other thing as well, is that there's not going to be one standard rule of thumb. Different cars are going to be able to cope with this, different conditions. So the BMW on wet tyres perhaps will be able to handle these conditions better than the Toyota can on slicks, for example.
When we were talking about the Toyota in qualifying yesterday, we talked about how high it is, how it's jacked up. It looks quite high because of the balance of performance. It's obligated to run high. The higher the car is, the more weight transfer you get as you go through corners, and the more mechanical grip it creates, which is what you need in wet conditions. If the car is stiff and low, it will skate across the surface and it won't lean into the surface. So I think the Toyota may well find itself in a good position here.
Look at that, the gap's gone up to 5 seconds in the last sector alone. It was 2.3 at the end of the lap, it's doubled. So the Toyota is coping so much better on slicks than the BMW is on slicks.
What you've got to do is you've got to work the car so hard in the drier parts to try and keep the temperature in the tyres so that when they go through the wet conditions, the temperature stays in. It's going to lose a little bit, of course, but if the track is fully wet and there's nowhere to create any temperature, then those slicks will then just become impossible to use.
Right, 75% of the track is absolutely monsoon conditions now, but there is still those 2 or 3 corners at the bottom of the hill which are relatively dry by comparison, and that is what is keeping the drivers on slick tyres out on slick tyres. They are just about keeping even in terms of pace. Let's look at the times of Potty. 2:32. Schrey just did a 2:36. What about Jamie Day? 2:32.0. So they're only a second a lap quicker at the moment.
Yeah, and Brichet's only done a 2:30. So whilst it's really hard, it's not worth it to have pitted.
So unfortunately, it's just got too wet too late, really, to make that gamble work, because the gap between those that have pitted and those that haven't are still a good 2 minutes. So I do think it's tricky to call it. And you can see the BMW out in front on wet tyres is managing to pull back away from the Toyota. But as long as they just stay out and stay on the road, they're going to have this, and it's not going to be too big a difficulty.
Increasingly harder to do.
It is getting, look, the rain has now come to this part of the circuit. The bottom of the hill where it was dry, the rain has now shifted. So it's now the whole circuit.
And that's Veruti now past Leclerc for 4th position. The experience of the AM is really showing. What a weekend for Veruti, who's been in this car since the start of the race. And he might get himself an overall podium, although they're 14 seconds back from Di Fuenza in the Mercedes in 3rd.
But if Veruti stays where he is, he's going to be the only driver all season to have won every single race he started. Because, of course, he won both of the races at Monza in the category. And he won yesterday, so it looks like he's going to get a clean sweep. But Antoine Potti continues to extend that gap over Michael Schrey. The gap is up to 6.2 seconds. They're 11.2 ahead of the BCMC Eastside Mercedes of Marc de Fulgencio. Check out the difficulty of the grip now, though, as they go into senior. There's no traction at all for Antoine Leclerc or Alban Veruti. They are desperately trying to keep those cars pointed in a straight line.
Don't forget that Leclerc is also a class leader, sharing that car with Loic Villigier, and they are both on slicks, and they are really, really struggling now. It's a lot wetter down in Beausset and Senior than it was the last couple of laps, and this perhaps is where it starts to change, and the wet tyre really will come into its own, because it will be impossible to keep the car on the track. It's not necessarily the pace, it's just simply not possible. What's Potti's lap time this time? Last time it was a 2:32, and this time it's gone out to...
It's got to be slower. 2:42. Goodness me, they've dropped another 10 seconds. So this is it. This is the critical point. But you've got 10 minutes, or essentially, with the lap times being at the 2 minutes 40, 4 laps. Can you really gain that much time in 4 laps? I'm not sure you can.
We've got 3 cars with time penalties from their pit stops. The 18, the 24, and the 36.
Here comes the number 7 Mirage Aston to unlap itself from Alban Veruti. Now this is critical. What was their lap time? They've just done a 2:37.4. That's only 5 seconds quicker than Antoine Potti. Jamie Day's just done a 2:31.9. That's only 10 seconds quicker. So, yes, they're able to push it faster because they're on wet tyres compared to everybody else, but I just don't think they're going to make this count. As into the pits now comes the 46 Audi. So the full motorsport Audi of Lonnie Martin has decided to pull the plug and come into the pits. The thing is, what's the point of doing it now? Because you may as well stay out there for the final 10 minutes just to see where you can end up.
At least, unless it's completely undrivable, unless it's just impossible. And I think there are parts of the circuit, and especially the end of the lap, which are getting to that point.
Yeah.
If you haven't got the temperature in the tyres, if you're not working the car in the drier parts, and you are a nervous driver, you might get to this. I mean, look, you're supposed to be full throttle into scene, which is a bit of a brake, a bit of a lift. And the car's aquaplaning on the straight.
Oh, this is tricky for Antoine Potti. Turn it, hold it together. This has been the toughest it's ever been for the Toyota as he drifts off the road at Senior onto the blue stripes. He'll hold that. He'll bring it back onto the circuit again, but he may drift off onto the stripes again here. Look, the car just doesn't turn at all.
You know what it's like, Jake? You have to bung on the lock and just kind of understeer through the corner, and that scrub helps a little bit with temperature, but this is getting to a point now where it is almost impossible on slick tyres through this part of the lap. And
Jamie Day's just unlapped himself.
But that's unlapping himself. That's not overtaking for the lead.
No, indeed. But, well, the Toyota's got to find a way to stay on the track. That's the thing. You've got 7.5 minutes now, roughly. Look at the water coming out of the wheel arches. The car just has absolutely zero traction whatsoever.
And you're a driver, you're screaming to the pits, can I come into the pits? And the pits are saying, no, you'll ruin your race. And so he's just got to stay out and try and hold on. He is still leading, even if he's had 2 massive moments at the end of this lap.
The only way to win this race now, Antoine, is to stay out and tiptoe. Just dance, just creep, just keep the car on the black stuff as much as possible. It's the only way you're going to win this race now. He's pulled out another second on Schrey, actually, in the BMW. So Schrey is now 7.4 seconds back at the end of the lap. So they are pulling away. Look at that, 2 minutes 52 now. So they're losing 20 seconds a lap to those that have pitted.
Another 10 seconds on this lap alone. And therefore, if that gap continues to build and grow out, still, Jamie Day is not going to be able to do a whole lap faster in the amount of time that we've got. The sensation hit at the end of the lap is like walking on ice with normal shoes rather than ice skates.
The leading car with wet tyres is that one. That's Berkay Bessler in the Borusan Automotive. Tom Edgar and the crew are bouncing up and down in the pits going, come on, charge forward.
He's passed Jamie Day then.
He has passed Jamie Day. Yeah, he has, and he's lapping quicker even than the Aston Martins are, because they're doing 233s. The Borusan Automotive BMW, which has a higher ground clearance, has 232.
It's exactly that. These sleek sports cars, the Aston Martins, the Audis, they're stiff and low. They don't have the same weight transfer as a taller car like a Toyota or a BMW. Look at the lock. He's just full on lock, and now then trying to almost slide his way through the second part and drift.
But he's able to keep it on the road. That's the key factor.
Well, he's got wet tyres.
That's why they're able to make 20 seconds up through this section, and nobody else can keep it on the road. So there's the difference in the time. Potty was 10 seconds slower on the last lap than Bessler. Bessler is absolutely on it. He could storm his way back to the top 5 maybe. Surely he's not going to have the time left to go for the win, depending on how wet this gets. Here's Antoine Potty again into Senior. Turn. The Toyota objects to turning and nearly drifts wide. He's very nearly in super tight Q mode through Senior.
What he's trying to do there is understeering through the first part, and as soon as he's got through half the corner, then trying to load up the rear, trying to get the rear to turn as you would do as a drift, but he's gone so wide. He's losing time. Race control don't mind about track limits like that because it's lost so much time, and they will be sympathetic to this poor Toyota struggling through. 10 seconds lost 2 laps ago, 20 seconds lost at last lap, and a bit of contact as the Alpine tries to go around the outside. The Alpine won't even know that Toyota is on slick tyres, and look how much more confidence and speed they have at the end of the lap.
This is not helpful at all. You've got to stay out of moments like that, because that's where you're going to break something on the right front. You've got to ensure that you stay out of trouble. If you're going to commit to this strategy, you have to keep it going. There is the other BMW. That's the 11 car of Enzo Juliet. They are quite a way behind Berkay Bessler, but the gap has come down to 2 minutes and 1.8 seconds now between Berkay Bessler in 21st, the leading car on wet tyres, and Antoine Potty out in the lead. But he's got 4 minutes and 16 seconds to go, essentially 2 laps. How much time can you make up in 2 laps? Surely it's not going to be enough.
For the race win, Shrey was quite a lot faster on the last lap than Potty. We're now at 3 minutes, and again,
my goodness.
Shrey takes 2 seconds out of Potty.
That's half a minute's difference now.
Yeah, but let's talk about the lead of the race. Potty is being caught by Shrey here. Forget about the fact that we've got guys who are half a lap behind. We could still see the BMW now starting to get a bit more confidence than Potty, or Potty losing confidence in his Toyota.
This is very tricky, because as the Toyota loses confidence, look, Bessler was 10 seconds faster on lap 21, 20 seconds faster on lap 22. Surely he's going to be 30 seconds a lap faster by the time he Berkay Bessler completes lap 23.
But the lap is 2 minutes and 30, or now 3 minutes for the wet dry shot drives. So that's still 4 laps to be able to overtake.
But he could certainly charge his way back into the top 10 at the very least. So he might just be able to get there just by staying on the road while everybody else drifts off it. And off the road goes one of the Mercedes. That's a spin for the Porsche.
No.
Don't get on the road when there's another car coming towards you. Goodness me. That's not good timing, is it? And there goes Berkay Bessler, powerboating his way through. Come on, we can do this. We can get a podium in class at the very minimum. They are convinced of this. They've got so much work to do. They're in 20th position. They are 10 seconds behind, 13.6 seconds behind Giacomo in the Porsche alone. But they are doing a fantastic job. Now, Potty came across the line in 3 minutes, 1.0. That was the slowest of anybody in the top 4. Bessler across the line. What has he done? A 2:32.8. He is half a minute quicker.
Up to 18th position, though. Only 18th position, and most of the cars ahead of him are all of the cars I think ahead of him are still on the dry tyre.
Well, all you need is for the car to become completely undrivable in the last 2 laps, which, as we've mentioned before, is not far away. And you've still got to cross the line to start the final lap. Look at this. He's virtually stopped at Senior now.
This is okay. He's nursing the car through. He just needs to keep away from everybody else. There's the BMW. looks a little bit stronger through there. It's an amazing style of racing, especially when you've got all the guys with the wet tyres blasting their way past.
This is the most insane end to a GT4 European race we've ever seen. And Ponti drifts off the road. He can't keep it pointing in a straight line, but nor can Michael Schrey. So if they can just do a better job of this last lap and a half than the Toyota, they can snatch the win back. But anything is still possible. What about Di Fulgencio in third? If he does a better job of it in the last lap, he could steal this. And if they're losing 30 seconds a lap to the guys on wets, they could be caught in the final couple of corners of the race. Look at the Toyota, it can't even stay on the road in the final sector. Schrey is going to make mincemeat of him in the last lap.
Have you ever seen a race finish like it? These guys are circulating so slowly.
He can't get on the power.
Here we go. Here we go. The BMW trying to get on the power. This is for the race lead coming on to the last lap. They're side by side. They're going about half the speed that they're used to going along here. They're aquaplaning over the start finishing line. The Toyota does have the lead at the moment. Some back markers want to play in this. They need to be let past 40 seconds a lap slower than the guys on wet, but they are still leading the race, and Ponti holds on to the lead.
Last lap, here we go. It's just get it home. Do the best you can. Just squirt the throttle delicately. Just let the momentum of the car get round the corner. Don't hit the throttle unless you're in a straight line, unless you've got progressive throttle. There is Di Fulgencio. He could steal the win here. He is actually catching them hand over fist. The gap between these three cars was 1.7 seconds when they came across the line. The Toyota and the BMW arrive on the scene first. Di Fulgencio can actually get a little bit of advice from the mechanic back on the pit wall saying, look, this is where they're vulnerable. This is where they're losing time. Just be a little bit more progressive on the throttle. Any one of these three cars could win this race. And don't forget, 19 seconds back is the Alpine, which is going 12 seconds a lap quicker at this point. If they lose even more time on the final lap, the Alpine might just steal it.
Onto the back straight. The first part of it isn't as wet as the second part, but in the second part of the Mistral, they're going to have to be so careful with the throttle.
Bessler's up to 14th and 55 seconds back. That was a 2-minute gap. It's now 55 seconds. If they have the worst lap in history, Bessler could steal this as they come across the line. Oh my goodness.
Careful where you turn in. Keep away from all these guys who are on the wet tyres. Don't get caught up with them. But the three for the lead are on the same piece of tarmac on slick tyres in conditions that would be red flags for Formula One. This is absolutely mighty driving from them all.
Bessler's up to 13th, and he is just picking them off on this last lap like raisins. He's absolutely storming his way through. And look at that. Absolutely no grip at all for the Mercedes. Around goes Di Fulgencio, and he's going to nudge Schrey, who also goes around. Oh my goodness. Second and third pirouette in senior. Surely the Toyota's going to have this now.
Where is the Alpine? You mentioned the Alpine earlier. That's the one that's going to benefit from that.
There it is.
He might get himself up to third position.
Is he going to spin it himself? We've still got 4 or 5 corners to go. Where's Berke Bessler? He's got to be coming into shot any moment now, surely. Do you remember those crazy races when they used to put a road car, a sports car, and a Formula One car on the same bit of racetrack together? This is going to end like this if we're not careful.
Only a couple of corners left for Antoine Ponti to hold on. This has got to go up there with one of the hardest races that he has ever done. A 3:12 the lap time last time through.
Bessler's only about 30 seconds back now.
Yeah, but you've only got 2 corners.
Well, you say that.
He's fine.
You
as long
say
as he
that.
faces the right direction,
But that's
he's going to be okay.
He's just got to face the right direction, but that is easier said than done right now. He's just got to tiptoe. Come on, Antoine, you are so close, my friend. This is going to be the slowest lap of Paul Ricard in history, but it's going to be the slowest and most glorious winning lap. Come on, Antoine, put your foot down. The X-Swift Toyota is going to win the craziest GT4 European Series race you could ever ask for.
Schrey does pick up second position, and there is Berke Bessler.
Oh, 1 lap away.
One more lap would have been it, wouldn't it? Where's he going to finish overall?
So as they come across the line, Bessler is going to have a hero's run to the flag. Where is he actually going to finish across the line? 4th. Oh my goodness. Oh my word. One more lap, and that would have been the winning strategy.
But it wasn't just the fact that he changed his tyres, it was the way he then drove after that, because Jamie Day hasn't made the same progress.
16 seconds back from Ponti at the flag. He was 55 seconds back at the start of the lap. Oh my goodness me.
Veruti takes the victory in Am.
Oh, don't you just love GT racing?
And Veruti losing a couple of positions at the end of that race.
You're going to lose it having crossed the line, my friend. You're carrying way too much speed.
And there is Veruti in the Porsche. And then a couple of laps, a couple of positions back from that, Leclerc and Villiger win again in Pro-Am.
That's 3 out of 4. What an amazing, amazing race. That's going to be talked about for weeks, absolutely weeks, maybe even months. That was the craziest GT4 European Series race ever. Well done to Toyota. 4 different manufacturers win the first 4 races of 2023.
Toyota have also won in the Scandinavian Championship. Emil Scaraz, whose car didn't finish yesterday, takes the overall victory ahead of the Alfab McLaren. And they were only separated by 0.2 of a second coming over the line. So if you were following that story, that was just as gripping.
Well, if you were thinking last night, well, that's the GT3 6-hour race done then. That's all of the entertainment and drama that we're going to have for this weekend at Paul Ricard. Not on your Nelly. What an amazing race.
I'm feeling a bit stupid with my shorts, though.
Well, I'm sure that there'll be somebody standing by with the right trouser wear ready for you to depart. But what a sensational race to end the weekend. And this is the longest slowdown lap in history as well. But what a moment for Toyota and BMW to drink it in. See? We were right. Stay out.
Well, you wanted a 4th manufacturer to win in this 4th round, and we've got it. For a moment, it looked like Shrey might be able to have stolen that second encounter, as they did in Monza. But just the tiniest bit of contact. What happened to Fulgencio in the end?
5th.
Finishing 5th.
And Josh Ratican charged through to 6th in the McLaren. Fair play. That's on slick tyres as well. So fair play to Josh Ratican.
Yeah,
they were only 23 seconds back. In fact, his last lap was 5 seconds quicker than the Toyota that took the victory.
So Berke Bessler on the wet tyre was in 4th, but the next wet-tyred shod runner was down in 12th position. So I think that actually shows that wets was not the right call, but Bessler made them work.
Yeah.
And as you say, one more lap and he would have won the race by a country mile.
My goodness me. That was an absolute thriller, wasn't it, folks? That's going to be remembered for quite a long time. And that's the kind of race, that's a fairy tale race. As a fan, as a spectator, you long for a race like that, thinking, well, this race is good, but I wonder if rain could really throw something into the works. And it really did. It probably gave us a ebb and to and flow. We were looking at the sector times almost more than we were looking at the racetrack there.
Jamie Day said to us, said to Gemma down the grid, he wanted a bit of rain to spice it up. I said it wasn't going to happen, and look at that. It definitely did.
There is going to be a change for the winner in the Scandinavian race, though, because there is a drive-through penalty handed. Oh, no, sorry, it's not for the winning car. I thought it was the 290. It's not. It's the 298. It's Bouveng. But that could stop him from claiming 3rd position in the category. What a race. What an absolute thriller. The ex-Swift Toyota taking the win from the Hofferbomb BMW by 3.4 seconds in the end, despite the BMW spinning on the final lap. The Code Alpine in 3rd place, and Bessler and Edgar, the heroes, come back. 4th position. One more lap, they would have won that race. There's no question. Fulgencio and Lennert in the Mercedes in 5th position in front of the elite McLaren. What a drive from Ratigan and Emsen. 6th position for them. Alban Veruti has won every single race he started this year in the category. What a fantastic run for him. 4 out of 4. The CSA Audi is in 8th. The Rennsport Porsche is in 9th. And the second McLaren, 10th position for Mitchell and Jenkins. Great work from the elite McLaren team today, as Leclerc and Villiger get another victory. That's 3 out of 4 for them in the class. The Code Racing Development Alpine coming home ahead of the AGS Aston Martin, who was 2nd in class. 3rd in class was the WNS Motorsport Lamborghini, which came home, Porsche, I should say, which came home in 17th position. 2nd in the category behind the AVR Avatar Porsche, Veruti, finished all the way down in 28th. That's Menethin Griso in 2nd in the GPA Aston. And then Hergon and Ferte did finish in 3rd, albeit they dropped all the way to 30th. What a stunning race that was. And considering how crazy it was, we only had 7 retirements. I am baffled, absolutely baffled, that only 7 cars didn't make the flag in the craziest race you'll ever see at GT4.
A massive thanks also to Race Control for keeping that one alive. As we said in Hockenheim last year, it was a bit frustrating not to have seen it, and they did completely the right call. Everyone was safe. and we enjoyed some incredible car control.
And we'll never know where the Allied Porsche, the Speed Car Audi, or the Racing Spirit of Le Mans Aston could have factored into that. All technical problems for them caused either by contact or mechanical problems. Very difficult to see those three cars not make the flag.
Yeah, especially the 74 Racing Spirit of Le Mans, because that's win or bust for them. 3 retirements and a single win.
What an incredible situation. Etienne Shelley is going to be down there in the pits. Gemma Scott is down there with probably a very wet pair of Toyota drivers.
Etienne, for you, how was that watching on? I mean, Antoine, what a drive.
Yeah, what a drive from Antoine at the second scene. My scene was a bit calm, you know, in dry conditions, so it was pretty okay. And Antoine did a fantastic job with slick tire on the rain, so yeah, very happy today. And I have to say him.
I know you do. Go grab him.
What a fairy tale. What an absolute fairy tale for the ex-Swift Toyota. In the most impossible of conditions, they managed to tiptoe their way round on the final lap and somehow hang on for the victory. Brilliant performance, and now that means we have 4 different manufacturers taking the wins across the first 4 races of the season. It's an absolute thriller of a race here at Paul Ricard, the second race of the weekend. The GT4 European Series gives us the most thrilling and most exciting, most unbelievable race in its history. Next time out, of course, the CrowdStrike Spa 24-hour weekend. That's when the GT4 European Series will be back. Dare we discuss a 5th different manufacturer winning in the first 5 races of the season? Well, after a day like today, anything could happen.